So I need everyone from Argentina, Colombia, Costa Rica, everybody, Puerto Rico, Colombia, Mexico, Panama. And I see someone from Germany, Guatemala, Chile, Italy, Brazil, Australia, Germany, New York. That's excellent. So thank you, because we can see so many activists that have worked and participated in this mapping project. Also, we have researchers, government representatives, colleagues, partners, and like we said, from many countries, Latin America, and also Europe and Germany, from England, from Spain, Africa, many countries from Africa, also from Asia, different countries of different parts of the world. Oh, we're so happy to have you all here from so many parts of the world. And now you're here and they want to see the results of this research. So before beginning, and we have already given you the welcome, we want to now ask if you have any question. You can place any question on the chat. And so our team will be answering through the chat. And this event has interpretation, French, Portuguese, for everyone that is in this meeting. Please put your mics off so that we can hear what we're here for. So I would also ask all of those that are caregivers and participated in the research to say, here I am. So all the caregivers, everyone that participated in the interviews, we will tell you the results. Please tell us in the chat, who are you, your country, and also we recommend to put your mics off. You have 30 seconds to do that. So place your names. Let's begin. Your names, what country, if you are a caregiver or participated in this research. 30 seconds. And there we have from Uruguay, who was interviewed. We have Mexico, Panama, Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, great, thank you. They are placing their names on the chat and we'll continue reading their names. Just, I also wanted to mention that we have interpretation. So if you need interpretation, just follow the instructions, which will be placed on the chat. And we have interpretation in English, French, Portuguese, and Spanish, of course. Okay, so if you have any question, place it on the chat. Please don't open your mics. You must have your mics of, as Luis already mentioned. And any question, please place it through the chat. So now that everybody is presenting themselves, you know that you can participate through the chat. We're going to begin, and Luis is going to share today's agenda so that you can know what we're going to have during this meeting. So Luis, please share with us the agenda. Thank you, Gustavo. So to begin this event, we begin with a welcome where you placed your names, the countries, and we will continue with the agenda. And the next part is the presentation of the investigation, where Florencia will share everything related with the. After the presentation of the research, we will present those results. And Mario, Luis, and Patricia will be in charge. After that, we will hear the activists. Gustavo, Daniel, Ramon, and Marisela will help us with that. And last but not least, recommendations and the closing remarks with Mariana and Tatiana. Well, with nothing else, and we hope that everything will be the best. We hope you enjoy the presentation. So Gustavo, the floor is yours. Thank you, Luis. Okay, so according to our agenda, I will give the floor to Mariana, and who is the director of this project. Yes, I believe we still have problems with the interpretation, and we will be solving them. I'm sorry about that. So I will now give the floor to Mariana, the director of the project, so that she can give some welcoming words and will be able to talk about this mapping. Thank you, Gustavo. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry, we're having technical problems. Global presentations give us different technology problems, but it has been a big effort to have this event. So we will give them a little bit more of time so that the interpretation can be coordinated so that everybody can hear in their original languages. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mariana Florence, for your words. And now I want to introduce Florencia. And she has been the project's coordinator, and she will be speaking about these approaches on this investigation. Now I give the floor to Florencia Rodriguez. She has been, she's sharing the screen with us. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Gustavo, for giving me this time. And now I am going to speak with you a brief summary of the process of the mapping and the main features of the activisms that we actually had the chance to meet. At the beginning, this project started in October the last year and ended in May this year. It was 8 very busy months. And at the beginning, we decided to create a list of activists and people who were caregivers in Latin America and the Caribbean. And we actually had to draft a report with a methodology to know the interest of these activists, as well as the barriers they found for the participation. And from that, we created some recommendations for the participation. In addition, we wanted to systematize the methodology from that has been practiced by Doncel in Latin America. And in the report that you can see on the website, you also will be able to read more about this methodology, the lessons that we learned from this. And when we speak a little deeper in methodology, now the pair work in this case means that we included some people who actually were in residential care. And this investigation with these pairs actually provided a lot of information, and it started to make us think about the different stages of the investigation, and all those youth who were part of the process were they also were part of the design or the on-field work on the identification of the findings and the conclusion drafting of this report. And it implies to have so many actions, many meetings and trainings, different discussions, material preparations, reflections, exchange of experiences. According we were working in this process, we were discussing what would be better, what we should improve, and that actually took us to have different meetings with a fantastic group. I also take the opportunity to say thank you and give a recognition to all this staff. And also, it is important to highlight that the first months we started discussing and brainstorming the study design. It was kind of flexible, and we were trying to see what were the things that actually were calling our attention during the way we were searching for different strategies, and we started this process in this way. Therefore, it is important to say that it is not only on myself, but it was also a simultaneous work that we did on the field with all the staff. And when we were collecting the information, we decided to make an online survey to all the activists. And in that survey, it contains several questions related to the group participation, the activist data, as well as funding, the partnerships, and other aspects. At the end of this survey aspect, we had some discussion in order to talk about some relevant ideas, as well as the meaning of activism, the impact, and to know a little bit more about the experience of those activists in real life. And finally, the projections and the future approaches that they wanted to give. In the relation of the work that we were doing, you know that the region is really rich in extension, in culture, in presence, and we had the participation of different countries. And we actually had an open invite to a lot of people, and we had the active participation of 7 countries from Latin America, Peru, Argentina, Guatemala, Ecuador, and as well as the regional groups. And the purpose of having all those countries actually took us to the operational aspect, and we were divided in different sub-regions with a coordinations, especially in the south of the continent. In addition, something that was really important for us in this process was the ethical aspects in the design of the project. It was very important for us to discuss it with every person, every person that was included in the study, because in order to make a real commitment, we had to share the information, we had to train all the people involved, we had to share about the ethical points, and also we had to share the methodological approach that we wanted to put in practice. And all the people who accepted to work in this project, they also accepted these ethical aspects. Now, when we speak about the searching, it was important for us with clarity what were the aspects that we wanted to take into consideration. And the first thing it was that an organization could be formal or informal, an individual activist, and a person had had the experience of residential care, and the person could be even in the transition, because in the different countries we have different natures of this alternative care. And it is important that all these groups needed to have the experience in care, also experience in advocacy, in actions, to have some protection systems. And we wanted to develop these partnerships in Latin America and the Caribbean. And once we started to search for these activists, we started to find out also their strategies. And we wanted to collect all the instruments, the publications, the different toolkits, even in different language, in order to include everyone. We found people in English and Spanish. We actually had to hire some interpreters for the different interviews that we had, especially in Haiti. We searched for contacts in the Latin American network. You know that we had a lot of people involved in this, especially people who has experience in the region. And we created a first list for our contacts. And the staff started to work, trying to find one by one. They started to draft emails, they started to make contacts. And then we started to scale up with different some other actors, and in that sense we started to discuss what was the best way to reach those important aspects of the organizations. And we had a discussion with different groups and activists. But this project was even beyond our own understanding. We started to find, for example, the snowball technique in order to reach the different activists. And even if they knew about some other activists, they could invite them. And eventually we had a big network of people that actually matched our criteria. We had discussions, meetings. We wanted to include everyone. You know that some people actually didn't consider themselves as activists. Probably because that it was not a common word in their language and culture. So we had to work even with them, and we had to discuss if they could be part of it or not. At the beginning, maybe if we had taken another way, we couldn't include all these activists and groups that actually are making part of it. We didn't want to include only those who had a lot of funding and some important resources. No, we actually included different countries and groups that actually had, for example, some other kind of context, even context in Guyana, in some islands in the Caribbean. And in some other cases, we had some cultural, political nuances that could be barriers, but actually we tried to overcome all of this, even to have this remote approach. And what did we find? We found more than 49 individual activists. And we had more than 14 organizations, groups, and networks from different countries, especially caregivers in those 19 countries. From all the total of the mapped activists, we had 16, in the Andean region in Central America and 24 in the south of the continent. Most of the groups are coming from the Andean area, and we also found a small group from Mexico and Guatemala, but most of the groups are coming from Argentina and one from Paraguay. Actually, it gave us different questions that we could apply in other investigations with care levers. What are the conditions that we may take into consideration? If the individual activists have different goals in a short, medium, or long term, and any other situation. And when we saw the features of the activists, we saw three different features. The first one is that most of them are adults, most of them are professionals, practitioners who are in an extensive area, and they are working directly with the public, with the childhood and adolescents. We also found a second group who are the young activists who have been consolidated. They already have consolidated ideas. And the third one are the rising activists. They still do not have an active participation based on objective, but they are already being part of a lot of activities and they have a vision to be part of it in the future. And in relation to the different groups of the people who were part of the survey, we had a lot of presence of youth. Even was the 70% of the population was less than 30 years old in different regions. And even though the different ages, most of the people mentioned that they started this activism when they were very young. And in the gender, it was around the 50% each. And from the collected data, we could say the caregivers activists actually took their attention during the last 10 years. That means that in 2012, in the Andean region and in the south of the continent and Central America, we could see a promotion of the topic with a little more intensity. They started to pay attention to the different programs, to the different people who were part of these programs in the region. Now, in relation to the groups, as we can see, we also had some new organizations and their background. It is important to mention that they said that they had the origin from the participation and the support they had in order to start as a group. And some other groups told us that they actually started during the residential care activity. That means that they were a group of people living in a residential institution and they decided to be part of it since they were experiencing this on the first hand. And when we had the different groups based on the main characteristics of the people who are active in these groups, we actually realized that 53% is women, 71% is adolescents and youth. 73% are caregivers, 14% are people within the system, 23% are practitioners, and 18% are people who are receiving and earning a salary for their work. And we also have some other characteristics of the activists, but we want to tell you a little bit more about the lessons that we learned, the methodology that we had in this peer group. And we are going to share with you the report. And now we have other people who is going to share the motivation, all the aspects related to the activists, what is the goal in the future, and what is needed to reach those goals. Thank you very much, Flor. You have given us a very brief presentation based on all these rich aspects that you were mentioning. Please mute your microphone if you are not participating. Please mute your microphone. I appreciate if you mute your microphone. Thank you so much. Well, as Flor was speaking, it has been paramount to have this Care Leavers Latin American network in order to obtain that result. So I want to say thank you openly for the assistance support that we have received from that network. Thank you so much. And that is also giving us a preview to Mario Bustillos and Patty. They also have been members of the Youth Committee of Latin American Care Leavers Network, and they also were part of the mapping. They are going to present the qualitative results of the investigation. I am going to give them the floor to present those results.
Thank you very much, Gustavo. I am Mario Luis Bustios. I am now in Bolivia, member of the Latin American Network, and it has been a real pleasure to participate in the project as a youth researcher. Today, we're going to present the results of the work that has been carried on in Latin America and the Caribbean so that you may see at a great scale so that you can review that document. Next, please. There are many ways of doing activism. In our work of mapping those activists, we were able to see that in Latin America and the Caribbean, the activists do a lot of work and they work on different subjects, some as volunteers, children and youth, care leavers. Some work on the different areas. They look for ways on how they can improve that work. And what happens when the children are separated from their family? They do it taking care of them. Others are professional. Many are psychologists or social workers or lawyers. The activists get together and organize as a group to make visible that vulnerability of their rights through residential care or alternative care with the idea of improving how this works. Next, please. The activists take their actions, the majority, to the children and youth that do not have parenting care. But it's also important to make an emphasis that the activists have been able to work with children in street condition and indigenous people. And this surprises us very much to hear this because we see that the help that is needed and the work to improve the lives of children and youth goes beyond institutionalization. And it is their concern as activists is to improve the situation of the children that are in the different cares or the different profiles. This, again, is important to see that empathy and the capacity of working in these spaces and the support that they can be for the organizations that they use their experience to improve the situation of these children in alternative care. Next, please. Now we're going to identify different levels of intervention in the system, the actions that the activists carry on in the care, and we're going to divide in 3 levels: in a micro action, intermediate, and in a macro level. We have decided to divide it in these 3 levels because we think it's important to acknowledge the work of each of them and the scope they can reach. I'm sorry, I have a cough. These activists that carry on micro activities, they are in as they work as volunteers and as caregivers. This is a support to the institution through their own experience. Something that we're going to make an emphasis in this study is the experience that has been useful as a tool to be able to work and to improve. Intermediate, we find the actions of some aspects of the system to implement programs and other objectives. These actions have resources and are linked to key actors of the system. At the intermediate level, we talk about youth organizations that try to work in a formal way in their different alternative care. And in a macro level, we talk about actions for the transformation of the system, advocacy in public policies, and also law proposals through these youth organizations. This we like to be able to share the work that each of them carry on in the different levels. I must clarify that these levels each are very important. And this helps very much for the transformation of the situation of the children that are in alternative care. I will give the floor now to Patty, who will explain the other part of the study. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Patricia Molino, and I work in the Latin American Network, and I'm going to talk about motivations. When there is a storm, the birds go away, but we are redesigning, we are compensating for those that need it. So thinking about the childhood, the adolescence that we had to live, we can't do anything to change it, but we can act according to what happened to see changes in for those that are in a place where at some moment of our lives we were there. For those that had a negative experience, they believe that the purpose of their life is that other people do not go through the situations that they had to go through, and to give the support to those that are in that situation so that they can have a better future. And they want to give back something that they received, and they want to be an important piece for those persons. Sometimes they are invited to participate in these spaces, peers, and they liked the activities, and they continue. And some youth from Central America and Caribbean, they found that they were at disadvantage in society, and that motivated them to participate in activism. That's why we're here. We're here to build a better future for others, because each of us during the mapping responded to the why for what the activism. And we're looking for the well-being for others. That really helps us to continue. These were one of the most satisfactory. I'm sorry, I believe the mics were muted for everybody. And now, can you hear me? Yes, go ahead. There are three things in life that once they pass, they don't come back. The time, the opportunities, and I always say that nothing is just by accident. If you're hearing me today, it's an opportunity to contribute, and it's an important source of motivation. Those children and adolescents trust us. They trust you. When I began, I didn't think that even though I had so many problems or obstacles, being social or economic, we always continue. And we try to transform to improve. It's incredible to see that our story can leave footprints for others. You have to begin. And like they say, we will not, now that we have begun, we're not stopping. Remember, your life is a story. Use it for transforming lives. And I want to thank each of the people that are here that have taken their time. My greetings. Thank you. Thank you, Patty. Thank you very much, both Mario and Patty, for sharing with us. Mario will continue. Thank you, Gustavo. Okay. Thank you. Please mute your mic so that we can continue with the webinar. We are many here and we need everyone to really pay attention so that the interpreters can also carry on with their work. Okay, let's continue. In the study, we were able to identify the barriers in participation. Many of the barriers that we were able to identify in the study of this mapping, we were able to identify something that makes a lot of emphasis, and it's the lack of resources. This is something that really called our attention because we should have that support, right? And we will be dividing all of these elements. We were able to identify social and institutional limits placed by the institutions, and also advocacy in public policy. There are consequences for the participation of caregivers, as to have difficulties for decision making, participating, the lack of belonging that there can be exist. Now we're going to see all of these obstacles that we had mentioned. The first one was the lack of economic and material resources. This limits the activities of activists in their personal life. Many don't have the time for activism, and this limits sustainability of their actions. To research funds, it's very complex, and these funds are used for organizations that are formal and consolidated. Activists that organized in networks or groups are able to have resources much more than individual activists. However, individual activists and those that participate in groups and in networks, they consider that financing is not enough. The second barrier are social and institutional barriers. These are limits for the participation that are placed from the care. On one side, the activists see that there is no knowledge from society in general and from the agents that are in charge of policy, public policies in relation to their problems and their right to participate. This limits their participation in other spaces of advocacy, public advocacy. The third factor is the lack of support. It's important to have support. As activists, we work and we know we need that support from an institution. That's important because that gives seriousness to our work. We are united for a cause, for a need, not because we have experience in activism, and that is the greatest barrier. This was said by a young person in Brazil, the lack of interest. This is because many of the young activists have to decide either they work, eat, or do activism. And this really calls our attention because they should have some type of support. And activism should be paid for. Even though we have people that work within alternative care and have worked for their position, we also see that activists from life experience can transmit this to other young persons because activism in any of the scales should be free. It should be paid for. It should be acknowledged as a work. Well, we have to be closing. Okay, thank you. All of the results that are shared today is the voice of help from each of the young persons that they don't want to see all of this just be left in a document and in a picture. We know the problem. And now we have to work with the NGOs, with the young people, with organizations that the experience of each one must be the best tool to change the future of other children and adolescents that will be caregivers. Now our recommendations. The recommendations for the states to acknowledge the rights of the children and youth, because the state must guarantee the repair of that damage. And we're talking about how can we repair the damage that was caused to each of these young persons and the vulnerability of their rights in those spaces. How do we prevent this to happen again? We are requesting a follow-up because not every care alternative care is as pretty as it's pictured. To the civil society organizations to support the challenge and the development of groups. We know that the majority of groups began with the support of other organizations. That's why it's important for organizations to support the development of these groups with resources, with accompaniment and training. And the recommendations for the activists were together in this. To form networks makes us strong. Remember, you have experience and valuable knowledge. Your participation improves the lives of children and adolescents. Remember, we're together in this. We know how to form the networks. We learn from each other. Now let's learn and teach organizations that our best tool must be our experience. Thank you. Magnificent. Thank you, Mario and Patty, for sharing these results in investigation. Now we are going to welcome 3 activists that are with us today, who are activists that have as caregivers, and they are working from different areas. They are Daniel, Ramon, Marisela Sanchez. I am going to present each one of them, and we're going to talk a little bit. We're going to ask them some questions so that they can share their experiences. Daniel is a lawyer, expert in international law and human resources, more than 10 years of experience. He works in immigration, refugees, exploitation, and human trafficking. He works in the Secretariat of Children and Youth Family in Panama. Thank you, Daniel, for being here. And also, we have Ramon Ayala, who is a student from Paraguay who is studying public administration. And as an adolescent, he had different spaces of participation. He was a representative of rights for children and youth, and he represented the region for the UN in 2016. He now works in that network, and he works in Paraguay. It is fabulous to have you with us today. And also, we have Marisela Sanchez, who is Mexican, 25 years. She is studying to be a veterinarian and participates in different projects for feminism and supports women, especially young girls and also single moms. We are very happy to have them with us, and they represent the different types of activism that Flor had talked to us about. It is an activism that is beginning. So I invite you to open your mics so that we can begin with this dialogue. Hello, everybody. Thank you. Hi, Maricela. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Danielle, are you around? Hello. Thank you for the invite. It's a pleasure to see you all. Thank you. And Ramon. Good evening. How is everybody? It's a pleasure to be here. Great. Thank you to have the 3 of you. So we're going to begin, first of all, with Danielle. Danielle, I would like to ask you, why are you an activist? Or how do you become an activist? Well, good afternoon, everyone. And good evening, those of you that are in Turkey. I hope you are in Istanbul having a good time. So, why be an activist? My lived experiences as a caregiver, and I was born outside of the country. I wasn't from Panama, so can you believe that? I didn't even have documents. So there were several gaps, and there are gaps in the follow-up. Those children and youth that are in that residential care. I have been able to see what happens, and that was a motivation. And I said, I'm going to describe the opportunities that I have had to learn. And now that I am learning so much with this splendid group of youth care leavers that have a fabulous mind, and wow, look, my my skin is really going upwards because I'm so excited. Now I thought I was alone in this, but now I feel so accompanied with, I feel strong to see young people at a global level that have been, are care leavers and have been able to build this. And when I left the residential care, I was born in Haiti, and uh, I greet my colleague from Haiti that is doing the interpretation. When I left the residential care from Panama, I was I was an adult, for I was still a minor, 18 years old. I couldn't be deported because I was a minor because of international laws. But when I was 18, I had been protected, and now I wasn't protected because when I left, I didn't have an ID to be able to be in society. I didn't have any document of identification. So I had been protected. Now I was unprotected. That was the gap that the Panama state didn't have a follow up. That for those of us in residential care, how can they have documents when they leave residential care? They can have some type of help so that they can have an ID. Because remember, residential care was kind of a prison. You never go out. We live with strange people, uh, and are cared for strange people. And many care with a lot of love. I have to mention that because I have lived that. And others, other motivation has been that it doesn't matter the reasons why the state must have an intervention to give protection. They have to see the context instead of separating the family from their context and take them to an institution that they don't know. They should first take out of that context the person that is doing the violence so that the child can continue living in their context with their with their friends, with their uh, toys. Give a follow up to that child with their mother or father, depending who is the aggressor, so that they can give a follow up with support. Because we have to understand that the last thing that should be done is to take the child away from their context. They must take out the aggressor because that makes the child a victim again, and that causes a trauma in that child or adolescent, and that child asks, why me? What did I do? Why did I complain? Why did I report my aggressor? If I hadn't done that, I would still be leaving home. So we have to incentive the state that the last thing to do is to take the child out and take the aggressor out. And that has motivated me to help a foundation that is called One Hand, and to give follow up to the care leavers of the residential care that I left, to accompany them legally, any efforts and dedication. I am now from Panama. I am a lawyer. I am I have a foundation that's called One Hand, and we help those that are caregivers. And I tell them, I was here. I was here. Look at me. And if I was able to leave and be where I am, it's because I know that there's something more. We have to see the future. Things pass because they have to pass, but we have to make a change. We have to be better and to demonstrate that the state has to get involved in not institutionalizing children. I can understand that the easiest thing is to take the child out and place them in residential care. But there are other options like foster care. If there are people that want to give an opportunity to another child to live in family until their situation is solved. I understand that everything is bureaucratic, but it's better to leave that child or adolescent in a family where they can feel support instead of residential care, where the child asks themselves, what did I do? Where did I go wrong? Thank you, Danielle, for sharing this experience. And it's true. This experience of, I would like now to ask Ramon, because he's also an activist and he carries on very interesting actions. What changes would you like to see through your activism?
Good evening, everyone. I don't know how to say good evening in French, but I'm trying. Okay, I hope you're doing well this afternoon. And giving a response to the question Gustavo has asked, I want to say that actually, as a consequence of being an activist, the change that I would like to see is a system that is supported by the governments in general in Latin America and around the world to have real changes in the participation of youth. That these systems will be based in youth participation and that all political decisions, but from civil society or any other, will be taken from a work together with the youth in order to make a transformation. One of the biggest challenges is that policies established by governments in Latin America and around the globe actually are shaped by especially technicians and the government. But I don't think it's the best because the technician can actually know the theory, but they don't know the daily life of a caregiver, of a person who is living under residential care. And I always has affirmed the solution is in the source, in youth, in people who are caregivers. They can actually give you a direct, a practical response to your questions. On the other side, something that I would like to see also as a consequence of being an activist, and especially in Latin America, I would like to see more interest. As in other areas, in Latin America, we don't see a great activist because of it lacks support. The activism in Latin America does not have a lot of enthusiasm and hope. They believe that they cannot create real changes. It's something that I share is that the movements and activism in Latin America, we can have creativity, but we don't have the funding. We don't have the resources other movements have, but we have the attitude, we have the creativity. We can have projects with little resources in comparison to others who have a lot of funding. And I see that the most important thing here is that we are giving big steps all around the region and even around the world. We are presenting clear examples of how we can achieve goals if we actually want it, not only from our activism, but also the feminist activism that is actually growing up. And it has a lot of repercussion around the world. And I'm sorry that I am giving a little more information than the question you ask, but I think it is important. As a consequence, I would like to see that policies will be based in 60% on the experience of youth, their reality, but giving practical solutions. And in a 40% will be given by the technicians. I am not saying technicians are not important, but I am saying that sometimes we spend years and years in investigation, collecting data, but actually, this is not giving us action. And I believe that we can create some shortcuts, going to the sources, finding for solutions with the youth, with the people who has had the experience. And I want to wrap up that the solution shouldn't be for the youth. It should be with youth, not only for them. It has to be work all together. The best solutions are those group solutions. Five heads are thinking better than one. And I want to give my congratulations to all of you, to the interpreters, to the organizers, everyone who has joined efforts to have this event. The important thing here is that we need to grow up. And I send my greetings because I am in this part of my continent and I send greetings all over the world. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ramon. Excellent. It has been great, your input. And to wrap up, I would like to ask Marisela. She's also an activist in her country. And maybe she can tell us about the challenges that she has faced in the development of the activism she has done. What would you think that is the thing that can help you to overcome them? Okay, good afternoon, everyone. And I would like to tell you that I am an individual activist. I do not belong to an organization or partnership. That means that I use my own resources and whatever I have at hand. And the idea is that the residential facility where I was growing up closed. And many of the children who were there, we were only girls, we were unprotected suddenly, and we have to be moved to other places, and some of them were single moms. And I started to participate in some of the feminist projects, and my purpose is to try to keep together those aspects in order to have some participation. I try to be aware about news of the region, activities, trying to find resources in order to provide medical assistance, education for the children, food, and all other needed aspects. And in regard to the challenges, I think that we can face so many challenges, but there are three. One is a lack of education, the lack of information and dissemination of it. And I know it is always needed money. And when we speak about education, I believe that as a society, we are not taught to have a life without people who are caregivers and who have been in alternative care system, and they do not educate you to be a professional. They only give you education to be a professional, but not educate you to be part of the society. And I believe that that is one big challenge it is important to have a different education, not only to learn about academia, but to learn about the individual education. And I believe that in regarding information, when we have more information, when we disseminate it, people is informed and they get interested in it. I believe that when we inform about something, people will like to be part of it. But with residential care institutions, sometimes people do not know about it. In my village, which is very small, people don't know about it, even being so small. And they don't have idea what is happening inside that residential care with the children who are leaving the residential institution. And we need to open the door to inform people what is this in order to be aware about it, and they may want to help. And I believe that the best thing is to go and knock the right doors, to find people who would like to participate, provide information, and to promote that interest in those who would like to help. Well, actually, that is what I believe. Thank you so much, Marisela.
Thank you, everyone. I believe that everything you have shared is very valuable. The challenges that activism has from the caregivers, and also what do we need? What, where should we go? And now to close this event, I am going to give the floor to Mariana Incarnato y Tatiana Lustig, who will give the closing words and some conclusions. Mariana, Tatiana, you have the floor. Okay. First of all, I want to thank all those that participated as speakers, my Latin American network, and those that we were able to hear and see their experiences of activism, because their stories, as Charles commented, is like feeling a warm feeling, because we share a common story, and that gets us close to each other. My name is Tatiana Lustig da Silva. I'm 20 years of age. I am a caregiver here in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. I participate in Doncel, in the collective group. And for the first time, the committee of the Latin American network has their own coordination with a caregiver. And this Sunday, we voted democratically among all of us. And well, my colleagues voted so that may have this big, challenging role. So I am very grateful for their election. As a last message, I call for action, and beyond activists, and also the people and officers that are hearing us, because we have people from all over the world hearing, and to see the Latin American power. There's a lot of strong feelings in our region. There are many things that I want to bring as a closing for this great event. I was thinking about that, the research and the interviews we carried on. I was remembering a person from Brazil. She is an activist, and she commented that she was very happy to see these different efforts in research, so that they wanted to hear interviews and stories. But she said specifically, it's not enough to be documents. It's not enough to be called for interviews and from the academia or others to take our experiences. We need action. We need to be valued in different ways economically, with something that will go beyond time. And I think it's important. It's volunteering is, we shouldn't make it romantic, because I think that it's a very thin line. Oh, that's beautiful. Everything's coming out of our own pockets. And those that are here, those that are not caregivers, work for many years in the problematic. And to be able to participate, it's not easy. It is not easy for us to continue our education. As Mario said, we have activists that have a high level of academy, but we know that we're privileged and we are the exception many times for the people that are in protection services. So it's important to continue studying. It's important to finish our studies in our careers. It's very important to stop having that subordinated role and to begin to be taken as participants of our stories and in the joint work that we do. We need that financing reaches the activists. The experiences, the participation has to be valued and acknowledged because it's of a great value. We see a great activism consolidated in the region, and it has to be acknowledged as experts that we are in this, as producers of knowledge, of practices, and this acknowledgement has to come from governments, academia, organizations, civil society. They must acknowledge and value our history. The activists, we have a great capacity and we're clear on what contributions and changes are needed in childcare. We need policies in care reform. We need financing. We need spaces, people to hear us. And it's not just a message. It's important to be these messages to be sustained in time. I want to thank very much those activists for their dedication, for their resilience, for dedicating your force, your determination, so that children and adolescents in the system be within a framework of rights, a system of quality. Many of us, our activism is so that our stories are not repeated. We don't want to repeat those situations of vulnerability of our rights. We know of the changes that are necessary for changing the care, and we must continue working. Thank you very much. Great, Tatiana. It's a pleasure to hear you with that force and enthusiasm. And now we're going to hear Mariana, who will give us the closing remarks. Thank you, Gustavo. Thank you, Tati. And thank you, everyone that were here today. I am going to
I want to name all the staff who has been working here. Marisa Rodriguez, Laila Miser, Ana Clara Landel, Gustavo Castillo, Luis Fernando Vázquez, Luis Mario Bustios, Patricia Lourdes, Viviana, Roxana Pardo, Viviana Contreras, and especially to the Doncel staff, the communication staff who has given us the best support today, as well as our partners, BCN, changing the way we care. And I want to tell you, it's a huge effort to have all the resources translated into English, Portuguese, not only to be read, but only to use them. It's a political decision, the creation of this project, and to create also the resources in the different languages. It encloses the idea we share in regard information, methodology, participation at work, and to have access of it from one region to another. Therefore, I am really grateful for all of this. Well, I am an activist. That's the best word that defines myself. I am an activist working with government, with organizations, with universities and youth, and it makes me feel part of all of it. I am grouping up with other activists. It doesn't matter the roles and positions we have, but I share this spirit with my staff, and I feel that we have created an excellent group with different profiles, nationalities, backgrounds, because at the end of the day, we all here are somehow activists. The activism is one of the privileged ways to be part of it. It's the effective decision of daily life in children and adolescents, and it is harvested by teaching them to participate and giving them the resources to be part of it. The activism is not as previously was thought that it was only a favor of the tissues that we're making part of. No, it's the possibility of having vision, of giving a glance on what I have lived. It has to be enabled to participate. How? By spaces, on safe spaces to hear and participate, to make them part on how and where they are living once they come out of the system. And what is the most important factor that facilitates the activism according to this mapping? To know what are the rights. That responsibility of the adults when we work with children and youth, how to practice them, how do we convey them with others in order to raise awareness over the rights, the dignity, and transform them into activism. This methodology we used, it's a sample of it. There's a quote that I liked very much on what I heard from the different activists in this program and project, and I want to share with you to wrap it up. And it was quoted by a young woman from Argentina, and it says, I believe that is about walking and walking and say change, change, change. It is not giving up until those changes really happen. Those may be slow, may take time, but nothing, nobody can say that we actually didn't face to the request of change. We need to modify the system. We need you to protect the vulnerable child. We need you to make something. If the state will take the responsibility of a child, they have to do it well. Of course, this young woman knows about it. She knows about the activism, and it's about pushing governments and the state to demand the change. And she is actually saying the truth with it. Do not say that we didn't aware about it. It's urgent to make a change on this. And we have to do it well. It hasn't done very well. Not yet. And as the rights on the child, it has been reframed with new recommendations, and it says children, young people, mothers, fathers, and other persons with experience in alternative care, they have to give their own scope and participate actively in the care system reform. It is not about that activism, something pretty and sounds well. No, it is not about it. We have to pay attention to demands like this young lady is asking in order to invest wisely instead of how we have done it so far. There are some countries in the region that are achieving this very well, while our others, like Florencia was saying, there are some places that we still haven't approached properly, and the right activists who are working, they are working very like in solitude. But we still have some time. We must to search for resources, opportunities, and the participative investigation, that discussions and active participation are a method that we can use. Definitely we have to use. And that work is about breaking down some paradigm. Thank you. Thanks to all the activists who have given us of their time, over the effort. It has been valuable to have you. It has been valuable to have the time of the youth that has participated here. Thank you so much, everyone. And now I leave you the information of the report, English and Spanish, as well as the mapping list that you can download from the Doncel website. It's available for you from today, and I send you my warmest greetings to all of you. Thank you so much, Mariana. I Well, we have heard that we already can download the resources. It's already in the chat, so you can download it from those links. You can see those reports, read them in the different languages, and to know what are the things that we can continue doing in order to strengthen this activism now. Thank you so much for your participation in this event. And thank you also to the interpreters who have been helping us to communicate all the results, the progress to all the participants and countries that were part of it today. It has been a great time for us, and it has been a great journey. We are really grateful with all of you. This is the onset to continue developing a joint work. Thank you so much, and bye bye.